We're going to go ahead and kick it off for those that are back. We only have about 15 minutes before everyone's supposed to get out of here to go get ready for the field tour. So to pick up where we left off, we want to talk about odor mitigation. So that was the last question that we had, so we're just going to kind of start. And then after odor, we will try to get to roads and reference traffic and dust. So we're going to try to keep it together so we can get through the topic. So, what are some of right now the best management practices or ways to mitigate odor, either proactively or if you happen to have a situation like they were talking about right over here, where you have someone that is potentially upset about odor? What are stuff that you can do in a reactionary space to mitigate that?
I'll start. I think Tammy asked, right, from CDPHE, you asked a good question about the odor, and most of the time we get odor complaints about drilling mud, and so we have done some things to our mud to try and minimize odor. But I think fundamentally we ask, the question to ourselves first of all, is it a health hazard or is it a nuisance? And so we're really going down the road of identifying whether or not it's a health hazard. And we've done a number of rounds of sampling of anywhere from 30 to 60 VOCs right on the shale shakers to the boundary of the rig or the sound wall. At the shale shakers, we've never seen any instance of any VOC that we've sampled on multiple occasions above the OSHA PEL for that particular VOC substance. At the boundary where we've sampled from whenever we get an odor issue, still well away from any public, we've not had any samples that were even detectable in most cases, if not just barely negligible. So then that kind of satisfies that path one. It's from our perspective on all the sampling we've done, which is a large number, it's not a health hazard. So then it becomes a nuisance. So that's a different category. Still something we take seriously and we want to minimize through neutralizers and our mud design and whatnot. But I think it's a whole different story when we can tell folks that it's a nuisance versus a health impact. Right. So that's where we're at the moment, and we'll continue to sample to make sure it's not a health impact and minimize the nuisance where we can.
Yeah, I think that goes to one of them unintended deals. In order to drill the wells that we drill, we have to use oil-based mud. It makes it much more, well, it enables us to do that. And one of the things that we're doing at SRC is we have identified, since it's an oil-based, it's a hydrocarbon base, we've identified a higher aromatic base. So it's not releasing at the lower vapor pressures that you see. So we've actually had CDPHE. I'm dyslexic, so this is a really tough business for me. But
you don't want him tallying in your pipe.
but we had them out on field tours and standing on top of the mud pits, and you can't smell them. What I really love, and I shouldn't say this out loud, but when Greeley complains about odors, I just go, man, this is amazing to me.
Yeah. That was a good laugh. Everyone needed a good laugh. I know one thing that we've utilized is, and it really does pertain to the mud system and what a particular operator is doing, but there also can be, even in a reactionary space, we've found a neutralizer, and you really have to play with the ratios at kind of how much you add to, based on how much is in your system. But we recently have found a neutralizer that we've received some very beneficial feedback from actual stakeholders in the area. So, like Mike said, you can initially, potentially utilize a different mud. Then there is neutralizers that can be added to that. I also know that there has been the instances where people have utilized almost like essential oils that you put into the air, but it can be difficult because anytime that you're putting any smell that you might find to be pleasing, someone's going to not find it to be pleasing. It's like the classic perfume story with someone that you work with in the office. It's like, I smell great, and they're like, you smell terrible. And that's something that, odor and smell is such, it is nuisance based. It's something that's a perceived deal. So I think that what's really important, like Eric said, is that, we always want to make sure that it's safe, but we have to continually find what are ways that we neutralize it, and how do we, those rig enclosures that can actually be for sound also help with odor. So it's that continual innovation. solution that I think we're all kind of striving for. But what I guess we would ask everyone to be aware of is it is a bit like trying to hit a moving target, because everybody finds different smells pleasing or not pleasing. So, I think the longer that we continue to have discussions with communities, with local governments, and really collaborate on that, we're hopefully going to have more tools. But even just looking at it pretty heavily in the last 6 months, I know, you have 3 large operators up here that have all put some heavy resources to it, and all of them came forward with a different solution, which means there's a lot more out there. So I think that we're just seeing, to your point, that odor's potentially the next noise. I mean, again, we did not think the quiet fleet would even be possible 2 years ago, and here's where we are today. So it's really about identifying the problem, listening to the public, finding out what it is, and then giving industry time to figure out what are the innovations that we can do to minimize the nuisance.
Yeah, I think, but to reiterate what Eric said, there's a difference between nuisance and health.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to keep communicating.
And it would be.
We try to communicate too.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I know you guys have started this mobile trailer, Tammy, so to the extent you have sampling results that'll be shared publicly, we'll use those as well. But so far, all of the industry, and particularly extraction analysis we've done, absolutely nothing around health hazards, all negligible to non-detect.
So with that, we're just going to roughly transition over to roads. So I know that this, roads especially, is another hot topic, especially for local governments. So when we talk about roads today, I kind of want to separate it into 2 bunches. You have nuisances with traffic and all that's associated with that, and then you also have mitigations for dust and different techniques, tools and techniques for that. So maybe let's address traffic first, a little bit about what we've done logistically, and then what are some of the best management practices that have enabled us to remove a lot of that traffic from the roads with piping and updated infrastructure.
I guess I'll kick it off. So when you asked at the outset of this panel, Heidi, the evolution of BMPs, I mentioned that 6 years ago the DJ was a tanks, trucks, and tongs world. And in a lot of places that still applies, tanks, trucks, and tongs. It's been great for the business for several decades, and it still works. However, in our world, especially in the urban settings, where the scale allows, I like to take at least 2 of those out of the equation, tanks and trucks, where we can. And that means pipelines, and it means piping water, and it means installation of a reasonable amount of infrastructure, so that over the life of the wells, not just during completions and fracking stage, but the 29-year producing life of the well, we can largely take trucks out of the equation, and tanks for that matter, which leads into an emissions category as well. So I think there's a multiple benefit from infrastructure. But again, as you've said many times, and we've all said on the panel, it takes it's not one size fits all. It's fit for purpose, and you must have scale, and you must have the reasonable level of economics to support it. But where we can, our company is absolutely a pipeline, take trucks and tanks out of the equation type of company, where it makes sense and where it's feasible. And I think that may be that whole equation of taking trucks and tanks out of the equation may be the best risk mitigation that we can do. Statistically, might be the best thing. When you look at the overall scope of development. So, Mike, what else would you say?
I agree, and that's probably one of the comment was made a little earlier that this used to be a small vertical world with daylight operations and such. When we started going to pads, all of a sudden you see hundreds of frac tanks out on a location, and people going, water, remember? Water's always a big issue. That visibility. Well, all them tanks had to be hauled in, all them tanks had to be hauled out, all the water had to be hauled constantly to get in there. So getting those trucks and tanks off location, and that's helping with the visibility and awareness. It's not the effort that we're doing to kind of get that visual out of everybody's eye, because quite frankly, if you keep seeing it, you keep getting mad about it. And if there's, even if it's right or wrong, it's always there reminding you of it. So we're working a lot towards just mitigating that side of it. And then also on the road side, for example, the dust mitigation. You watch these trucks, we have 5 mile an hour or 10 mile an hour speed limit on our lease roads, but even at that, on a dry day, it can kick up some dust. So we put down a dust mitigation on top of the road, and we use one that's an eco-friendly, works very well. Mag chloride. There's other solutions out there, just straight water, is another solution. Doesn't last very long, but it's a solution. So I think all the companies, we continue to look for ways that we can maintain the road. We don't have to keep repairing it, keep the dust down. You know, we understand, you know, especially if you're driving by somebody's house and you're kicking up dust with a truck every hour and a half or every 15 minutes. It gets old. So we work with the counties. We can't just put anything down on a county road. You know, you have to work with the county there, and they have to do it. So our lease roads we can take care of, but county roads and such, you have to work with them. And I mean, there's even right now in Adams County, they want us, you know, one operator pave a road. So there's a lot going on. And you know, one thing I will say is we're not the goose that laid the golden egg for everything, but we do want to do what we can to make things as less impactful as we can.
So this picture right here, just so people can see, so this is just a vehicle tracking pad. So you've got a cattle guard there, and this is just a picture of one of our access roads. A lot of times you'll have this on location, and the goal is to really try to shake off any additional mud or anything that truck could be bringing from your access road out onto a road. So that's an example of that. I did not take a picture of a dirt road because I'm hoping we are all on the same page about that. But with dirt roads, you can potentially utilize, like Mike was saying, there's eco products. Historically, we've used a lot of mag chloride. With that, it's also one of those things that sometimes a surface owner or a farmer won't allow us to use that on their location. So before you had some of these eco products, your options are pretty much water or mag. And if a surface owner said you can't utilize that, we're not, we can't do that. So then you'll utilize water. One thing to be aware of is if you're utilizing water and a water truck needs to come in and take care of that road, you could then increase your traffic because that truck will be there 3 times a day. So there's always, anytime that there's trade-offs for all of this. And so it's we need to reroute traffic because this person's unhappy. Okay, so you reroute traffic, but then chances are you're probably going to find another individual that's not happy as well. So there's trade-offs kind of for all of these. One thing also that we've really the industry's developed on is, for dust mitigation, is our containerized sand, which I'll let Ben talk about here a little bit. I'll pull up your picture.
So again, back in the day, one of those bins would be stuffed into an air slide or a Fruhoff and brought to the location and offloaded, taking about 45 minutes to an hour with pneumatics. Now we have to do a little bit of extra work, set up a pad on the pad where we can put a forklift in that'll pick up that box one at a time and put it on a storage facility on location. Some of the benefits of this, besides dust control, we're not blowing it off anymore, sending huge clouds of silica dust into the air. So that helps tremendously. But it also allows us to work with the operators if there are limitations on traffic. We can now store a lot more sand on location in these boxes and move it around as we need to, as opposed to before where we would have a limited number of bins available to us, so only a limited place to put loads. So the truck traffic had to be on a fairly consistent basis throughout the 24-hour period. Now we can have peaks and valleys that will allow us to work with the operators and the neighborhoods on adjusting some of the truck traffic.
Perfect. Does anybody have any questions right now about what we just spoke about? Okay, we got 1 minute left, so if you've got a question. I really promised Kirby we'd be done at 2:45. Okay, so if there's no other question there, I am just going to show the last thing that we didn't get to spend as much time on. So is just lights, right? Noise, light, dust, odor, your typical offenders. So there's the obvious mitigation for light, which is point it down. And with that, operators, when they set up, they really do try to be aware of which direction the lights are going. But one large innovation that we've had is switching over from halogen to LEDs. Your impact radius for a halogen bulb is substantially larger than an LED bulb. So this here is just an example of LED light plants that we've utilized. What are your guys' kind of experiences on your locations as well?
Yeah. We use them.
Same thing.
We point them down and keep them within the sound walls, largely.
Yeah. And if there ever is one that we can't ever fix, we want to work with the community to see, talk to the stakeholders, go out there at night, see is there a light that we can point down. Again, safety is the #1 priority, so we have to have the lights out there. It's not that we want to keep people awake. We've looked at options of blackout blinds if we ever cannot move a light and we know it's bothering someone. So again, it's that social license piece. It's working with the stakeholders and recognizing that that is legitimate to them. So with that, it's almost 12:46. Does anybody else have any questions? Great. Well, yeah, right. And so what I'll do is I'll be leaving a bunch of my business cards at the table. If you do have questions about mitigation, feel free to reach out to me. And if I'm not able to answer it, I can also pass it along to the folks up here as well. But any questions you guys have, we definitely want to hear from you. Feedback is really helpful for us continuing kind of this stride towards social compatibility. So thank you.
All right, Mike, good to see you, bud.